Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. We have two very fantastic guests with us, Garima and Nandana, and they're going to share their presentation on their high school journey, their experience, their standardized testing, and much more, especially with their advice. So, stage is all yours.
Yeah, so I can start, I guess. So I'm Garima. I went to American high school. As far as unweighted GPA, mine was like 3.94. Weighted, honestly, depends on how colleges calculate it or like how you weight certain like honors classes and stuff. But it could be anywhere from like 4.3 to 4.5, depending on how you do things. I took 14 APs, a couple honors courses with like the PLTW engineering pathway that our school offered, and yeah, English honors and stuff. But yeah, and then for SAT, I had a 1570, and for the PSAT, I had a 1490, and I was an NMSQT finalist. For activities, I did a lot of clubs, I guess, like at my school. So like I did Science Olympiad and WeSTEM, and I was president for SciOli, co-pres for WeSTEM. For Astrophysics, Math Club, and French Club, I was vice president. Yeah, for community service organizations, a lot of it was like outreach within the clubs I did, right? So for like Science Olympiad, we did outreach with local middle school students, teaching them during the summers. For Math Club, we taught them like throughout the year for a math counts, like a competition that they had at Thornton. And yeah, through WeSTEM, we worked with like another engineering club at the school, Innovators, and we had like a mentorship program for elementary school students. But yeah, that was like the majority of it. I also did like my service hours at the library mostly, but yeah. As for my college decisions, I am going to Berkeley this fall as a data science major, but I did also get into a couple other UCs, Caltech, UMich, U Austin, UIUC, and there's like a couple others you can see listed there. I got waitlisted at like about half of the UCs I applied to, and I'll elaborate on one reason that could have happened later. But I also got waitlisted at CMU, Rice, Cal Poly Slow. And yeah, I was rejected at a couple, as most people are. Some being San Jose State, and then some of the Ivies I applied to, and like Stanford, MIT, etc. But yeah, in most places I applied either data science or computer science, depending on how good their data science program was and like whether they had that as a major option. And some places I applied like applied math or statistics as like the second optional major. When you like apply, they sometimes let you put two down. But yeah, that's a really brief summary. I'll get into more details later, and you guys can ask during the Q&A. But yeah, I'll let Nandana introduce herself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Nandana. I also went to American high school, and I'm a friend of Garima's, and I'll be joining UCLA as a mechanical engineering major in the fall. My stats are on the slide. I had an unweighted GPA of 4.0. As Garima mentioned, weighted changes depending on how you calculate it. I think mine is slightly around like a 4.6 if you calculated the UC way. I was in the top 10 of my graduating class. I took 11 AP exams, 9 total classes, and I didn't self-study any APs outside of that. And I was also in the PLTW pathway, which offers some honors courses. For the SAT, I took it once. I got a 1560. It didn't end up mattering because the UCs don't use it. I got a 1510 on the PSAT and was also an NMSQT finalist. Similar to Garima, a lot of my activities were school clubs. Specifically, I was president of Innovators, treasurer for speech and debate, secretary for Science Olympiad, helped found WeSTEM. And then on top of that, I played the piano outside of school for 10 years. The community service organizations Garima already covered. Additionally, or in addition to UCLA, I was admitted to the places listed on the slide. UCI honors most of the UCs except for Berkeley, as well as Georgia Tech, UT Austin, Rice, University of Washington, and UIUC. All of these were for mechanical engineering, and I applied mechanical engineering most places. If they asked for a secondary major, I put electrical. I was waitlisted at Columbia, Harvey Mudd, and Santa Barbara, which should show that the decisions can be pretty random, and then rejected in a lot of Ivies and Stanford, MIT, those places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can go on to general advice next, but Yeah, just like I'll elaborate on some stuff that I did, and Nandana will also add to that as we go through the advice, and then we can go into Q&A right after that, I guess. So I guess one of the biggest tips I'd have for just college apps in general and like deciding what you're committing to would be to show some sort of continuity. Obviously, the colleges want to see you explore a bunch of different options and figure out what works for you, but in the end, don't just do like a bunch of clubs just halfway kind of thing. They want to see that you've actually been involved in that whatever activity it is, whether it's like even like for world language classes, yes, you only need to do it for like 3 years, right? But it helps to show that like, oh, you've done it a fourth year or something. You just go a little bit above and beyond in that sense, and you're not just doing it for the sake of doing it kind of thing. Obviously, if you don't like it, don't force yourself to do it. But like for me, one of the biggest things was like science Olympiad, right? So I started in 7th grade because my elementary school didn't really have it. And I continued on until senior year of high school. So that was like 6 straight years of doing it. And I am interested enough in it that I will probably be involved as a college student as well. So that was something I could show like, oh, I helped my like local community, like my schools, by being on the team or being an officer. And then also in college, you could expect me to be involved. And colleges ultimately want students that help the college too, and aren't just there to take classes, stay in their dorm, study, and that kind of thing, right? Nandy, do you want to add to anything on that?
I think you covered it.
Yeah, and then for the second thing is do stuff during the summer. It doesn't matter what you're doing necessarily, like whether it's like pursuing hobbies. If say I know Nandana taught like piano and stuff like throughout the year because she's very good at it, right? And she can do that.
Bit of an overstatement, but yeah,
yeah, but like if you have a skill, use it kind of thing. Like don't just, I mean, I don't know. In my experience, like it helps to show that you've been helping others and not just yourself kind of thing. But yeah, show that you've been involved. Again, stay busy, apply to a lot of programs. It gives you practice writing essays for senior year. And also, honestly, I used a lot of the essays or like paragraphs here and there that I found still relevant. Like if it like some programs will ask like, oh, why are you interested in a certain topic? And if you're majoring in that same thing, nothing like the things I applied to junior year spring did not drastically change by senior year fall, right? So some things you can reuse or also just helps you brainstorm in a sense.
Oh, I'll try to add to that. You don't, when Grima says try to be busy over summer, it doesn't have to be through an official program as long as you're doing something. So, you know, if you're the type person to get, or if you like, for example, get rejected from all the programs you apply to, don't stop there. There's a lot of other things you can do over summer. Even things like minimum wage jobs can have some sort of value. So it doesn't have to be officially endorsed, but definitely do something.
Yeah, or like you don't need an RSI, SSP, whatever, like fancy program to like show
or even
you
Cosmos,
care.
honestly.
Yeah, like it's not super relevant. Like I think for me, I mostly did research or like project related things during the summer just because I didn't really do research during the school year kind of thing, and I wanted to add that to like my application or whatever, right? And it was a way for me to delve into like data science and CS because I didn't take CS courses really in school until my senior year. So that was one way I just showed how I have experience in my major. But that is not necessarily something you have to do. Mandy, do you want to explain? Yeah. But yeah, like I think the second bullet point under that, fill out the research portfolios and the art portfolios and the engineering, whatever it is that the school has. Not all colleges will have that, but I do know a lot of them do, especially some of the bigger colleges.
Yeah, Ivy's definitely ask for research abstracts, and I believe MIT allows you to submit maker portfolios. Columbia does too, so
yeah,
certain places.
Yeah, and I just personal experience. Obviously, I don't know how or why we got into certain colleges, but specifically, I can speak for myself. For Caltech, they like when they give you your acceptance thing, they get, like have a brief note about something that stood out to them when they read through your application, right? And for me, they had mentioned the research I had done. So the fact that I had like actually filled out that research portfolio, which is like a really small button on the side of their like dashboard that like is not required. It just says optional, but if you fill it out, it always helps you because it shows that you've gone a little bit above and beyond. So if you've done something, don't be shy to like show colleges that because it definitely helps. But yeah. this is something I found to be helpful, but it was helpful for me to like sort a lot of the stuff I did into like categories in terms of ECs and stuff, because it's just easier to organize what you want to show to the AOs or like anyone you're networking with, like different aspects of your life. And it's like, for me, I had like 3 main categories. One was like the research I'd done over the summers. 2 was like all the clubs I'd done in school and the community service stuff, and how that led me to certain interests I had that I then expanded on during the research I did. And then for 4 was like how I used what I know to help the people around me, which is mostly through community service organizations, because those are the research, clubs, and community service was the main 3 things I think for my portfolio, at least, because that's something I spent a lot of time doing. But yeah, they're just easier to explain because you can connect all of the pieces together that way. But yeah, that's like pretty niche, I guess, but that is something I found helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a broader version of that advice is just try to have a narrative or something that you're trying to push, because the point of a college application is for you to give admissions officers your story. So instead of having a bunch of disconnected extracurriculars, try to at least analyze for yourself why you did certain things and what they led you to.
Yeah. The next one, I wish it wasn't true, but for me at least, because GPA is a pretty significant factor in a lot of the universities you apply to. I know I remember hearing like every time you'd mention like, oh, I got a B or whatever, everyone would be like, oh, it's not a super big deal, right? Like it won't like make or break your application, which yeah, obviously it didn't. And I know like I had a fairly high GPA, relatively at least, but I do know that a lot of universities do care about that a lot more than you'd think. Like we were like, I think a friend and I were looking through the UC admissions criteria that they like publish at least, and like they had I think 13 reasons, and of them 7 or 8 were grade related or coursework related or like
reasons.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, it's like a significant majority. And also like some colleges, I know for Georgia Tech at least, like a lot of places on their admissions website, they'll remind you that around like 70-80% of their admitted students are from the top 10 of their class. So you can tell right off the bat that they care about that. They care if you're valedictorian or whatever else, right? Like, but other universities don't care as much. Maybe some are more like holistic or as holistic as they claim to be, and others aren't. So that is something to consider. It's not the least significant factor, but it's also not the most significant. Obviously, you can like do a lot with a somewhat lower GPA and you can still get into great places, but don't undermine that factor. I think because I personally did, I was like, oh, it doesn't really matter that much, but you can see some patterns in that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm just emphasizing the fact that it matters a lot at some places and less at other schools. I know LA is very, like they care a lot about the GPA of their incoming class. I believe Berkeley cares less. You can probably find that information online if you really care. But I think the only thing to take away from that piece of advice is if you have a great GPA right now, it's absolutely worth it to keep that up and keep it as high as you can. But if you don't, there are still amazing colleges that will definitely overlook it. So, you know, just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and the last piece of advice, pretty common, proofread your application. I thought that was like, yeah, no shit, like obviously, who doesn't proofread? And then I made a mistake. Just to like elaborate, I guess, for me, so on your Common App or UC app, yes, they want you to submit your transcript, like the PDF, like through the school, but they also ask you to submit, like to add each course one at a time. So I'd done it for Common App and I was like, wow, this is tiring. I did it for like a couple of other UCs that don't, or like not UCs, other colleges. And then for the UC app, I was doing it and I was like, I added all of them. I skimmed through it and I was like, okay, I have all of the courses. Turns out I didn't. I like forgot to put English in like my senior year schedule for some reason. And for UCs at least, a lot of you, if you go to California colleges, your schools probably emphasize their A to G requirements. Like they want you to do 4 years of English, 4 years of history. Now, the fact that I didn't do in English, according to my application on the 4th year, was probably a problem, which is why I think a lot of UCs didn't accept me. Like initially they waitlisted me. Of course, I got into UC, I got into Berkeley and stuff, and some either skimmed it and didn't notice or put 2 and 2 together and they're like, okay, she probably took an English kind of thing, because I had taken AP English junior year too. So they can put 2 and 2 together. But do proofread, because in my experience, like I had tried to like go back and check if I can update that. and they don't let you update a lot of things. Like they'll let you update standardized testing and stuff. This is just for UCs and this is just for last year's applications, but they don't let you update a lot of different parts of your application. So actually go back and check, have like a second or third person read through it and make sure everything's accurate. But yeah,
a lot of unnecessary stress. Yeah, I think the last tiny bit of advice here is doesn't really apply to public schools, but some private schools do care about demonstrated interest. So definitely Google that. I believe Rice is one of the schools that does care about it. And if that is a factor in a school that you're interested in, try to attend events and get on their mailing list and click all the links and things like that.
Yeah, I would say demonstrated interest, just for context, is like they want to see that you care about the school, not just for its name. You've actually like been involved in researching the school and getting to know it better. So yeah, as she said, click on all the links, go to the website, open all of the emails, join like webinar sessions, info sessions, kind of thing. And just, yeah.
And if you are in the summer before your senior year right now, sometimes they offer interviews as part of their application and you can sign up before you even submit. So do those as well.
Yeah, sometimes I know for Rice specifically, they don't like, they'll just like release interviews on a random day and then be like, oh, you hope you get a slot, right? Kind of thing. And yeah, I will say though, like I did a lot of demonstrated interest for Rice because it was one of my top choices, but that doesn't necessarily mean you'll get in. Obviously, there are other factors. It just like maybe if they have two applicants that are like pretty close and one shows demonstrated interest, obviously like they're more inclined to pick that person.
Yeah, because that person has shown that they're very inclined to attend that school if given admission.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But yeah, that is the extent of what we had planned. I guess we can start the Q&A session.
Of course, yeah. So I can actually share my screen for this portion.
I can
because while you guys were presenting, there were some questions that came in the chat personally to me. So I can share. So these are always like the typical questions like, what are some extracurriculars that you felt had a strong impact on your college application?
Okay, I guess I can start. I would say the clubs I did, especially because I started most of them freshman year and continued to senior year and actually like got pretty far up in the positions. I was like president or vice president in all 5 clubs I was involved in. And then community service, obviously just show that you care about the community and not just like yourself. You're not super narrow-minded in that sense. Also, service hours are required, obviously. And then also, I'd say the biggest thing is like research over the summer. I did Cosmos last summer at like the summer after junior year. And the summer before that, I did BWSI, which is like the Beaverworks Summer Institute that MIT runs. It's
what was it again?
So Beaverworks Summer Institute, it's run by MIT.
Beaver as in like the animal.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I would highly recommend if you guys can look into that because it's free and it's really good for like getting into tech, I guess, if you are interested in that kind of thing. But yeah.
Yeah, I think my answer is pretty similar to Garima's. I also had a lot of longstanding clubs that I ended up having officer positions in, and I think that showing that commitment helped. Additionally, I also did the BWSI thing that Garima mentioned, and my specific cluster, not only did we like it show that I was able to build like a project over the summer because it's like a project-based sort of summer program, but we actually sort of spun that off into like an organization that I ended up being in for the next 2 years. So again, another opportunity to show commitment, and like for me specifically, since my major is mechanical engineering, it was an opportunity to show that I had actually built some projects. Yeah.
Cool. And the next question was, what are some tips you have for students that are just starting high school?
If you're just starting high school, I would say in terms of the academics, I think the presentation already covered most of it. Grades absolutely matter, and definitely try to get involved in clubs early on. I would say do a bunch of them your freshman year and then try to stick with as many as you can up until your senior year. But more than that, I would say the emotional side of things is really important. When we started, at least freshman year, or at least I can speak for myself, when I started, I was really worried about getting into college and sort of only saw the next 4 years as a chance to maximize my acceptances. And I would say that made me a lot more miserable than I needed to be. So, you know, try to also make some time for your friends and for yourself, as cliche as that is.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, get involved. figure out, like, I mean, ask upperclassmen and whatever else, like how your club fairs work or whatever you guys call them at your school, like how when like all the clubs are, I guess we call it club rush. Basically, there's a bunch of clubs around and you get to like sign up for whichever ones you're interested in. Also just talk to people, like what you're doing right now, just like learning from other people, I think is one of the biggest things you can do, because other people's tips will help you a lot more than like an adult who hasn't maybe been through the process, because it changes every year kind of thing. But yeah, also socialize. There's a big thing about like, oh, if you do academics you can't socialize and that kind of thing. So socializing doesn't also necessarily just mean partying kind of thing. Obviously you can hang out with your friends, grow close relationships, and also just like even within clubs there are so many events that a lot of students don't join just because they're like, oh, it's not like strictly helpful, I guess. But growing those connections ultimately will pay off for the most part. Yeah.
Not just emotionally, but also in terms of club officer positions, people promote people that they like. So you try to just be a good person.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. And where did you complete your volunteer hours? Do you think it left an impression on college admission officers?
Both of us did the majority of ours at the library, Alameda County Library, specifically as teen tech help. Like we were basically just helping people use computers. So I would say for me, I don't think that made a huge impact on my application. It probably would have if I had gone further into service hours, but just because the way I did it, most of those hours were as a teen tech help. And then I think I got a few from being like a link leader. So for us personally, probably not, but it absolutely can if you're a little more serious about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me at least, I did it like freshman year, and then I finished the 40 hours before COVID hit, and then I didn't really think about it again. I did mention it, I think, on my application about like just as like, because it was a bit it's like it didn't seem like glamorous or anything. Like we were just helping some of the older people at the library with using the tech, because obviously they're not as comfortable with it as we are when we grow up with it, kind of like. So I guess I did mention it in the sense that like I was like, oh, it like gave me a different perspective, I guess, because like I had grown up being like, okay, I know how to use a phone, I know how to use a laptop, I've used it since I was like what, 2 or 3 kind of thing. But they like a lot of times they'll be like, oh, how do you like create a Google Doc kind of thing, or like how do you log into something, and it's like it really makes you slow down, I guess, and like more notice like how much tech has like grown kind of thing. So in that sense, yes, but I don't think it was like something really significant on our portfolios. Yeah.
It wasn't even just old people. Sometimes it was people that like you knew that the library was the only place that they could access technology. So I do agree with the, it gave us a different perspective thing, but probably not a huge factor in decisions.
Of course, yeah. The next question was, what are some strategies that you use for your AP exams? And if you're comfortable sharing, what type of scores did you receive?
Okay, I can start. I got 5s across the board for all the 11 exams I did. Strategies. Okay, so I would say the first AP exam that I did was Euro. I believe they swapped it out for World now at American. Not that that really affects the advice. That year it was online, so we were self-studying a lot, and I used Fiveable, which is like this AP study community. They have a Discord server and they do like these review sessions online. So it was really helpful to like study with students across the country and kind of like have us read each other's practice essays and things like that. The next like junior and senior year exams, it was in person, so I could actually study with like people at school. I would definitely recommend creating study guides with friends if you have friends taking AP exams, and relying a lot on College Board's resources since they're the ones that write the exam. I don't think prep books were a huge deal for either of us for most of the exams that we did. They might help a bit with like AP history exams with giving you like practice prompts, but to be honest, you can probably survive most APs without them as long as you're using AP Classroom and prompts that College Board has previously published.
Yeah, I think the general thing with prep books is almost everyone will say, yeah, I bought them, I didn't touch them kind of thing, right? Like I had them, I didn't use them, because College Board, honestly, like if you ask your teachers, if you're doing like a class for the AP course, ask your teachers to unlock the practice MCQs, the FRQs, and that kind of thing. Obviously, like in addition to Fiveable, there's the AP videos themselves, and Khan Academy is also a great resource. and just search online. There's so many teachers that post their resources online, or they're like, especially after COVID, all their recorded lectures are usually on YouTube, right? Like if you don't like the way your teacher teaches, find someone else to teach you, right? Also, yeah, ask, like, look on whatever, like, socials, I guess, like, right, Reddit isn't really, but like,
No, but Reddit does help
yeah,
though.
Reddit helps. Like, they give you a lot of tips, like, about the types of questions and stuff, and like what you can really study for. Also, like, look at the syllabus, or like the course
and exam
handbook,
description.
right? Yeah, the course and exam description. It'll tell you like the weighting of certain topics and what you really need to care about. Like, a lot of times classes won't cover the last few units, and you'll find out, like, you check if it's a significant portion of the exam, obviously, and if it isn't, don't worry about it too much. Just
Yeah.
worry about the rest, and like look at the curves, see if it's relevant, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
And yeah, for scores, I mostly got, I think I took like 14, right? I think I got a lot of 5s, a couple 4s, and like 2 3s on my history exams. But yeah, generally average is like a 4.5, I'm guessing. I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what are some tips you guys have to maintain that solid GPA?
I would say, well, it's just about, I don't know if I have great study tactics. I would say, I mean, I was able to maintain a GPA that I'm proud of, but I did it in a lot of ways that I wouldn't recommend that you do it. Definitely prioritize your sleep and just make your grades like a priority in your life, which I'm sure you're already doing. But as long as you're giving yourself time to study in school and you're actually paying attention in class, you should probably be okay. Since we now have flex, definitely use that as an opportunity to ask for help. It's never a bad idea to ask for help if you need it.
Yeah. Also, I obviously it depends on the teacher, depends on the class. But for me personally, like, even some of the classes I struggled most with, like physics C and stuff, like conceptually at least, help being like close to this teacher and being like, once you've like established some sort of like, it's not, yeah, I guess, but like you can like you're more willing to ask questions because it's not as intimidating, and that definitely helps. Also, they just like are more understanding in general. I know a lot of times in senior year or like in junior year you'd be busy because like college apps or whatever else, right? Or like junior years you have other things going on, and like if your teacher knows you well, they'll trust you and give you extensions if you really need them. But outside of that, I'd say like I got 2 Bs because, oh, I was just being stupid, honestly.
Well, no, Takish was like,
okay, yeah. For calc, I thought I studied enough for the test, and I didn't. And with a lot of math classes, at least I'm American, it's like 70-80% tests and quizzes is for like your grade weighting. So that was a lot. That like hurt my grade a lot. And as you'll notice, you'll probably start noticing this freshman year, it's very easy for your grade to drop like 2-3% in one day, but it never goes up that fast. Like, just keep that in mind. And yeah, just ask upperclassmen again for advice. They've had a lot of the teachers you had, they have tips on how grading goes. But yeah,
I also think studying with friends is underrated. For calc, sometimes like before tests, my group and I would just like study, like stay up studying together.
Yeah.
I guess figure out the study strategies that work for you.
That's like for me personally, studying with friends usually doesn't work because I get distracted. So I didn't do that as much, but yeah, do whatever helps you learn best. Yeah.
And I think this question is kind of covered, like, have you done any research or internships, but is there anything else you want to add there?
Yeah, that covers it.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And did you have a counselor for your essays, or did you write them on your own? And what would you recommend?
I can start. I would say yes, we wrote ours on our own. My counselor was more like a general college counselor. Like, I had her for like to help with my activity list and everything else. She mostly just like edited for the most part and gave advice in terms of like my college list and things. A lot of like in terms of writing, like she'd read it and she'd give like small comments here and there, like grammatically, stylistically. But other than that, a lot of times if she didn't like how I wrote it, she'd just be like, this doesn't sound very strong. Just try again. And then you'd start again, right? Like, that's as much as someone can really help you without it being inauthentic to your own voice. because like for me, I am a lot more humor oriented in my writing. Like I can't write very seriously. So that is not like if someone else had edited mine and like done a lot in like a lot of the writing themselves, you would have noticed that tone switch so fast. So honestly, I don't know, that kind of thing I didn't have much help on, but I do recommend a counselor. They often know a lot that you don't. Like for mine, she would like mention which ones care about demonstrated interest, so I didn't have to look for it just because she'd been a counselor for so long, she knew, right? But yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with Grima's advice about a counselor. They're definitely very expensive, but they do often know more things than you do. Me personally, I didn't have a college counselor. I had just people edit my essays. I would say that they did pretty much the same thing that Garima said, where I would have to come to meetings with essays and they would, edit things about voice or provide suggestions about like different ways that I could angle what I was trying to say. It helped a lot for me, not only with actually getting advice on what I was writing, but also just keeping me to deadlines. I'm very much a kind of person that'll just put things off to the last minute unless I have like a meeting that I have to have an essay done by. So if you're someone who also struggles with scheduling, they can definitely help a lot with that.
Yeah, because as Nandana said, it's expensive. You don't want to waste their time or your money kind of thing, right? Like you like get it done. Like a lot of times I'd like have homework and then I'd be like, I didn't work on this essay, right? And then I'm like, but the call's in an hour. I might as well finish the essay, right? Like,
Yeah.
so you get it done. Because otherwise it just like, I guess it's just self-consciousness. I feel embarrassed if I show up with nothing done, right? So
Yeah,
that's going for you in terms of keeping yourself to schedule. But yeah,
definitely agree.
Perfect. I think that was covered. What factors did you consider in when you tried to pick your college list?
For me, because I was applying mechanical, that actually influenced my decision a lot. You'll notice that a lot of schools that have really great overall sort of prestige actually don't have the best ranked schools for engineering specifically. And because I knew I wanted to go into like a core engineering field, my list was instantly narrowed down to a lot of like large public schools because those tend to be the best engineering schools for some reason, as well as a few smaller private schools that I really wanted to apply to regardless. Personally, I didn't have any huge constraints on location or even cost or student body size or anything. So a lot of my list was just US News, to be very honest. But I would say that if you have any major, concerns about financial aid or like location or things like that, you should definitely take that into account.
Yeah, I think for me it was a lot of yes, what has a good major, because ultimately for me that is that is my priority, like having a good academic foundation to go into career jobs. But yeah, so it was a lot of like what has good data science CS programs, and then from like the top maybe 30, 40, I then limited down based on location. I wanted to generally be in pretty liberal areas for obvious reasons. Yeah, I also didn't want like super rural or like small places. With a few exceptions, obviously, I did apply to some places that I didn't really intend on going to just because I wanted to shoot my shot kind of thing. But yeah, financial aid was also something significant. It didn't necessarily stop me from applying to places, but I knew in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, if I get in here, I expect to get a certain amount of aid. Otherwise, I can't afford it because I also have a sibling in college. So that is just not something that is a constraint that my family had. But beyond that, there wasn't too much. Again, like I had a lot of choice in my option, in like when applying. I know some people have parents who have specific things that they want like from their kids' college choices, but my parents did not really do that. They're like, do whatever you think feels right, because ultimately it's your life. But
yeah, just expanding on what Garima said, definitely if a factor in your college list is that you don't want to apply to somewhere that you know you're not going to get in, I would say don't follow that voice in your head. There were a lot of places that I feel like looking back, I really should have applied because if I had gotten in, I would definitely love to go, but I didn't because I was thinking at the time, like, there's no shot I'm getting here anyway. It's not worth wasting my time on the essays. You only have one shot to apply to undergrad, likely. So just apply everywhere that you think you would feel really proud to go. And if never be the one to reject yourself. You can let the admissions officers do that if they choose to.
Yeah, also like for when you get rejected, because well, almost everyone almost always gets rejected a few places. Know that it's because the admission officers didn't see you fitting into their school. So that's ultimately a good thing, because if you had gone and you didn't fit in, that's a waste of your money and 4 years or 3 years, whatever it is, off of your life, right? But yeah, I think that's it basically.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry.
And so how many colleges do you suggest people should apply to? Like, what's like that range?
If you want to use the UCs as one school because it's one application, CSUs is one application, and then everything else. I mean, it kind of depends on how much time you're willing to put into it. I think realistically, you can probably go up to like 22. After that point, it gets to be a lot. But it depends on the kind of help that you have and the amount of time that you want to put into it. And honestly, if you even want to apply to that many schools, because I can't think of 22 schools I would realistically want to attend.
Yeah, also obviously with every school you add like $60 to $80 to the expense of applying, because almost all schools do have an application fee unless they waive it for whatever reason. I would say I applied to more schools, like I think around 20 if you count UCs and CSUs as one each. But yeah, I don't know, I applied to a lot of schools where I was like, I don't think I'm getting in, I don't think I want to go, but I will apply, because I knew that for me, like later when I hear people being like, oh, I got in here and here, I will always like question, I'm like, oh, what if I had applied, what if that ended up being my future, right? So I did that. Like I think specifically for Caltech, I was like, I had written the essays, and then when I opened Common App to like put in my essays, like from the doc that I was writing on, I was like, I didn't realize that they had changed up the questions since the last year, because that's what I had used last year's prompts that I had found on some website, right? And I was like, well, okay, I have to redo 3 essays, or I could just not apply and save $70. And for a good like week or so, I was like, I'm just not doing it. I'm so annoyed. Like I wrote 3 whole essays and they were such good essays, and then I can't use them, right? And then I was like, and my parents were like, just apply, right? Like you did everything else on the application. It's just 3 essays. You've written so many at this point. So I did, and it panned out, right? And also like the thing with what Nandana said about don't self-reject yourself, like don't I like the day before Caltech, I was like, I am not getting in. I do not think this is going to be very like I'm going to hear good news kind of thing. So I was like already like set on like, oh, I'm not getting in. And then I opened it and he was like, surprising, obviously. So like you never know who they want or like what they're looking for at a certain time, at a certain like year, right? So yeah, that's something.
Yeah.
But yeah, covered it. Next question.
Okay. Does AP Chem required to get credit for computer science? Is AP Chem required to get credit for computer science major in UCs?
No. Okay. I believe the question is like, if the question is, do you need AP Chem to be admitted as a computer science major to the UCs? The answer to that is no. They're usually just looking for your overall GPA. And so specific coursework like AP Chem, I don't think will have a major impact. After that, it depends on like what college you're going to and what the AP credit that they accept. I know that UCLA specifically does accept credit for AP Chem. So if you're a computer science major at UCLA, you can apply that. But yeah, that's kind of an after you get admitted problem. So if the question is, do you need it to get admitted? No.
Yeah, generally, I think for UCs, they don't require any specific courses besides their A to G ones. And it's not like you just need to take 3 years of math, I think, 4 years of English, 4 years of history. They don't care if it's AP or not. Just do the bare minimum and then they'll evaluate whether they want you or not. And I don't think there's no like specific science requirements like AP Chem or whatever to get into CS or any major for that matter. Yeah.
Yeah. And is it too late to do SciOly or Science Olympiad as a rising freshman since there is a middle school division?
Perfect question for you.
Yeah, I would say not at all. I think you can start SciOly at any time. It's just convenient to start earlier because obviously you have some sort of expertise in certain events that carry over from Division B, which is middle school, to Division C, which is high school. Also, there are so many people who were on our team that started in like sophomore year, junior year, even. Like, it doesn't matter if you try out, at least this is for American High. If you try out and you do well on your test, that ultimately matters a lot more than what you did as a 13-year-old on a other middle school team, which you could have been carried by your partner, kind of thing, right? So this is at least for how my school did tryouts, but yeah, generally you should be okay. It doesn't, you never think that you can't do something because you didn't do something earlier. Like, just ask like the officers or whatever else, and more than likely they will give you the same response. Like, you can try out. It never hurts.
Yeah, just study for tryouts.
Yeah.
And the next question was, do 12th grade courses and APs matter as much as junior and sophomore year classes? How do these 12th grade courses matter in college?
Do you want to answer?
Yeah, I can try answering that. I think in terms of whether 12th grade courses matter as much as junior and sophomore year classes, I believe the GPA that colleges will look at when they're deciding to admit you is based off of like all of your coursework in high school up to your first semester of senior year, because obviously they don't have semester grades yet. So in that sense, your junior and sophomore year classes have a greater impact on your GPA. However, they obviously want to start challenging yourself in 12th grade. And you usually have the opportunity to take the most challenging courses in your 12th grade year. So definitely take advantage of that and don't be slacking off.
Yeah, generally, like when you submit college apps in like November, December, October, whenever it is, it will just ask you to indicate what courses you're taking right now, and then your grade will just be in progress. Or maybe if you have trimester system, you might have a grade to give, but like in January or whenever you do get your grades, they will ask you to submit them. So do not slack off just because they weren't in your first application initially, because they do ask you to update grades eventually before they give out decisions for like later decision dates. And for earlier ones, even if you get in like early decision, they'll ask you for your grades, and then you want to not be failing them. So yeah, but yeah, GPA wise, I guess junior and sophomore do matter more. But yeah.
In the last few questions, Nanda, instance for you is, can you talk more about speech and debate? When and where did you go for your speech and debate club, and how? Also, would like to know what you did. Did you do any speech and debate class in high school?
Yeah, sure. So I joined speech and debate as a freshman in high school. I know that for American, Thornton has a team, but I wasn't on it. I specifically only competed speech events for most of high school, so I can talk most about that. I did original oratory, and my first season was just coached by like upperclassmen in the club. I got private coaching for my sophomore year, and that ended up helping me through my senior year, sort of, teaching me the skills of the event. There's no speech and debate class offered at least American High, so I didn't take one, and most of the coaching within the club is just done by upperclassmen. However, private coaching helps a lot if you want to be competitively successful, especially for debate, but definitely for speech as well. So if you're trying to, really advance in competitions, highly recommend that. But yeah, at least at American, it's not a selective process. So if you want to just join as an extracurricular and, improve your speech and debate skills and learn from upperclassmen in the club, everyone's free to do that. It just depends on kind of how seriously you want to take it.
And if you both do not mind sharing, what organization did you have your college counselors from? Or like your essay counselors, sorry.
Mine were privately found. Honestly, I don't recommend the approach that I used, which was panic sometime around the fall of my senior year that I didn't have help, and then go on CollegeVine and get lucky enough to find someone that I actually really vibed with.
Yeah.
Don't do that, but that's what I did.
I had the same counselor my brother had. She's from Accept You, the organization. I cannot speak for like all of the counselors there, but I do believe most of them have like admissions experience. Like, they used to be admissions officers and then they retired or whatever it is, and then they chose to start counseling. So they do know what they're talking about. They're not just guessing. Yeah, like with a lot of high school counselors, I would say, yes, they can edit grammatically and stuff, but they do not know how they got into the colleges they did. Like, we are giving advice based on what we understood from our experience. That is not to say that if someone did the exact same thing, they would get in, because honestly, it's so random.
And that's not to say that we didn't do things wrong.
Yeah. So yeah, just like go to someone who has experience, I would say, generally. Obviously, if you want just someone to edit your essays, I wouldn't pay for that. Like just use Grammarly, honestly, or like ask an adult to edit if it's just like grammatical things. But for yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, for actual admissions advice, I would say going to a place like Accept Use.
Yeah, it's very expensive though. I will like obviously we've had the privilege of having parents who would pay for that, but it is very expensive, like several thousands of dollars
Yeah.
expensive. So
And hopefully
Yeah.
I'm proof that you don't actually need all that advice to get into like a school with some sort of renown. But it would definitely have taken a lot of the stress off of me if I had just gone
Yeah.
to a place with, some sort of reputation. So it just depends on, if you have the resources for that. You're not necessarily at a disadvantage without it, I guess.
yeah, it just made my life easier, I would say.
Yeah.
Which I appreciated when like with everything else going on, but it's not required. Yeah.
And the next question, and then again, this is starting the speech and debate. Did you start your speech and debate in elementary, or was it later on?
It was later. I joined as a freshman in high school.
Okay. Okay, perfect. I think that concluded all the questions that were put in. Oh, I think there's one. Can you talk about your research opportunities, if any?
Okay, I guess I can start. As I said, Cosmos last summer. It was fun, I guess. It was also useful. But it was like a 4-week residential program. I did it at UC Irvine, and mine was like about astrophysics and computational like machine learning and that kind of thing, because that is something I was interested in. Because like it worked. This is what I said when like you link stuff, so there's a narrative, right? Like I did astrophysics as like a club in high school, and obviously I'm interested in data science and stuff, so I thought that like cluster was perfect kind of thing for what I'm interested in. And basically we learned from like professors, we talked to like grad students, we visited labs on campus for like the physics and astrophysics department, and then we like worked in a group of 4 to ultimately end up with like a project or like a poster that we presented at the like program symposium at the end. And it was a good experience, honestly. Like I learned a lot of like different CS, data science, ML stuff there, which is definitely one of like my bigger talking points in like college apps, in terms of like why do you want to apply to the major you're applying to kind of thing. Because again, I didn't do CS in high school, really. Like I mostly just explored that stuff during the summer. So yeah, it was good. It was helpful. I would highly recommend applying. But if you don't get in, there are a bunch of other organizations you can use to get in places. But yeah.
And then did you do anything or?
Not research wise, nothing significant.
Perfect. So is Cosmos recommended for the money it asks?
Very
Yeah,
expensive.
it's expensive. It was like, I think it was like, I can't remember if it
10,000?
was like $3,000 or $4,000 for 4 weeks, which is a lot of money. But again, my parents were willing to spend that money to support whatever I'm interested in. But you don't need to spend that much money. A lot of times you can cold email professors and just ask, and like they'll often either pay you for being a researcher, or like I guess it's more likely that you're just unpaid, but you do get that experience and you get like that learning opportunity, I guess. So there are a lot cheaper and smarter ways to get research done. I just had the money, so I spent it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would highly recommend. Cold emailing has very low success rate. Yeah, I would say, I mean, it's not recommended is sort of an interesting word. There's no like one ticket to college. So if you're thinking that spending the $4,000 on Cosmos is necessarily going to make your application a lot stronger, not necessarily the case. So the first thing that you should be considering when you're looking at these summer programs is if you would even enjoy the experience, if it had no impact on your application. And if that's true, then definitely.
And yeah, there's definitely people who are at Cosmos that did not get into a lot of the like colleges that I did, or there are people who weren't at Cosmos that got into better colleges than I did, right? So it's like Cosmos is not an end all be all in any sense, or like neither is any single part of your application. So yeah.
Perfect. And do you recommend to take hard courses or easy courses in 12th grade for first semester when you're applying to college?
definitely don't underestimate the impact that college applications will have on your schedule. So I would say it's important to keep challenging yourself with your coursework, but don't overdo it. It's just about knowing like what you can balance. Garima and I took pretty difficult course loads for the first semester of 12th grade and still managed college apps
Yeah.
just fine.
I think it's context is such a big thing because yeah, I think we both took like 4 APs,
We
right?
took 4 APs and then we had 2 classes that were like
Yeah, okay, so yeah, I took 4 APs, which is like, wow, that's a lot for senior year. But also my other classes were like health and PE. So it was balanced, I would say, like half the time. Also, yeah, it also depends on like just what you've heard from the teachers, because not all APs are made the same, not all AP classes are made the same. I would say some people in my high school had a lot harder teachers than I did. I think I had a very chill set of teachers that were really nice, and like they knew we had college apps. They were like lighter on the coursework first sem, honestly, and then second sem, everyone had senioritis. They didn't try to really stop us, with a few exceptions, obviously, but know the context for your school and what you're used to. Like for me, I like gradually built up to that, right? I think I took 1 in sophomore year, 3 in junior year, 4 in senior year, and it was fine. But if you're used to like taking 1 or 2 and then you take 5 just because you're like, oh, I need to submit college apps and you're panicking, that's not going to help you, honestly. But yeah.
just know yourself.
Perfect. And I think that is the wrap of the questions. If anyone has any questions, now is the time you can unmute yourself and you can say how many, like whatever you have. So the question was, how many APs have you taken in junior year?
I took 4, Garima took 3.
I took 3 and then I self-studied 1. Yeah.
And self-studied 1, right? And none of you took 4.
Yeah.
Cool.
I would say, yeah. I mean, self-studying works if it's a easier AP, and easy obviously depends on the person, but I knew that I could handle it with what I was doing, but it's not required, obviously.
Okay. And any other questions? We'll just wait for like a minute or two to see if anyone has anything. Okay. So well, thank you both so much for coming today. It really was a pleasure talking to y'all, and I'm sure there's a lot of insightful information that you both shared. And once again, thank you to all the participants for joining today. And yeah, thank you all.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.